and welcome once again to Fantasy Fiction Focus. We're here today with Ken Lizzi, who is in Portland, Oregon, I think, aren't you? How are you?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Simon.
Yes, good evening, sir. You're looking very festive there in the background. It must be, as we record this, it must be around Christmas time, I think. And you have presented the world with a wonderful present today, I think, haven't you?
That's correct. The print edition is released as we speak.
The print edition of what? What is the book called?
It is Under Strange Suns, my second novel.
Now, this sounds like a very, well, strange book, I suppose. It's in the science fiction and fantasy genre, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about this wonderful book that's come out today, print today, I think, but you said it's been out digital edition for a while, but this is the print edition, right?
That's correct. Yes, Under Strange Suns is a science fiction novel. It's, I would say it's my take on the planetary romance, or the old sword and planet genre, along the lines of John Carter of Mars, which you may be familiar with. Under Strange Suns tells the story of a disillusioned ex-special forces soldier who is hired to look for the missing inventor of the faster-than-light drive. And he discovers that there is nothing new under strange suns. The universe is the same wherever he goes, which he finds, but at the same time he discovers a certain amount of redemption.
So you mentioned there John Carter of Mars. Is that sort of that's just to sort of let us get an idea of what sort of a book it is? But was that kind of one of the inspirations for this story, or were there others?
Oh, absolutely, there were others. I would say Edgar Rice Burroughs is probably the most famous, who laboring in the planetary adventure minds. But there was also Lee Brackett. And others in that era. I've read quite a few of them. Excellent stuff. Matter of fact, some of them perhaps were better practitioners of the art than old ERB himself.
Even so, it's been out, as you say, a digital edition's been out for a while. Is it doing quite well? Is it being well received so far?
I've been pleasantly surprised. It's gotten traction. It's been selling well. People seem to enjoy it.
So why the delay in the print edition? I mean, is that normal to bring out a digital book first and then the print edition later?
Well, this is my second novel. The same occurred with my first novel, Reunion. So from my perspective, it's completely normal.
Now, is Reunion, I was going to come to Reunion in a while, but is Reunion connected to Under Strange Suns?
No, these are standalone books.
Oh, okay. So this to come out, of course. So the inspiration is obviously from this wonderful genre and things. Have you always been interested in this genre? Obviously, you've read a lot about it. But have you been reading this since you were 2 years old or something like that?
My nose has been in a book since I was probably about 6 years old. I read very widely, but it had to include, from an early age, fantasy and science fiction. So yes, I've been a fan as long as I can remember. I think I sat down and started reading The Lord of the Rings when I was 11. I recall getting near the Falls of Rauros, the end of the first book, and realizing they're never going to make it to Mount Doom with only 40 pages left. I didn't know it was a trilogy. But we all have to start somewhere.
Were you writing back then, or when you were just a preteen?
I think my first short story was an awful Han Solo story that I wrote when I was about 12 years old. I went back and realized there's something wrong, and filed off all the Star Wars serial numbers and made it my own. But I think even then I was interested in intellectual property. I wasn't going to steal from George Lucas. So I've been writing for a very long time.
So, and this is just, how long did it take to write this one? Is it an epic?
I would say it's about mid-length. This is probably under 300 pages long. So not an epic. I enjoy the big doorstopper novels that most people are putting out, but my roots are a little more pulp. So what I write tends to be a little shorter, a little more compact. I mean, I miss the days where you could pick up a novel and 175 pages wasn't unheard of.
Now, so this one is not a massive tome, as it were. Then, but is there any further adventures in this particular world? Any sequel plans or anything for this one?
It wasn't my intention. I keep seeing comments on reviews saying, people saying that they're interested in reading more of the adventures of this crew. We'll see. It's not on my radar now. I'm working on other projects.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I've done a few like that myself as well, where I not really considered the possibility of sequels, but I've not closed down the story completely at the end. So without really meaning to, there's been room for a sequel, and then and now I'm starting to think of everything like that. Is there room for more adventures? But of course, we as writers we have to be careful that we're not sort of the story is not going to be too thin. You're sort of exploiting the success of a book, and you haven't really got much of a story. I guess. I mean, we could all sit down and say, "Oh, I've got ideas for a 12-book series," when you really don't, and you just it's all very thin. So, what is now this is over and done with. You obviously, I'm assuming that because this has just come out in print, that you've been working on something else for a while, and something's in progress. What's happening right now?
Well, I will probably be pitching my latest novel soon, which is fantasy work. We'll call it crime fantasy. Any luck, that will be available 2016. We'll see if I can sell it. And I have started another book, which I have constructed it with a series in mind. Speaking of series fiction, and that one is also going to be a fantasy. See how that goes. Just reached the 12,000 word mark, so it's a nascent work right now.
Well, the 12,000 word, I don't know if that's a big landmark. Some people would probably think they're 100,000, but I mean, I tend to be quite happy if I get to about 15 or 20. It means I've made progress, and I'm definitely going to finish it. I guess that's the thing. But of course, if Under Strange Suns is wildly successful, I suppose you may have to consider doing some work on that on a second part.
I suppose so. Again, this is well, not again since we haven't mentioned it, but writing is not a full-time gig for me, so I can follow where my own particular desires lead me rather than pursuing the dollar. Mm-hmm. But the dollar is always tempting. So yes, if it's wildly successful, I can be tempted.
Yeah, as long as the material's there and things, as long as you've got and you're not, as I say, making it too thin. Now, you'd mentioned about crime fiction. Now, you've done some stuff like that before. I think you've done short stories and things in anthologies that were crime fiction rather than fantasy, hadn't you, in the past?
That's true. I've published a couple of crime short stories in anthologies. One, in fact, was turned into a short film by a film student at North Carolina Film School. It's available, floating around the internet somewhere on Vimeo. Pretty good. I enjoy seeing the changes from what I wrote. See what has to be done to adapt it to a different medium.
Would you be interested in that yourself, in pursuing a film as a form of writing, like screenplays and scripts and things?
No, I have written comic work before, and I can do it, but thinking in static imagery is not my strong suit. So I'd be willing to do it some more, but it's not something that truly interests me.
No, it is a different way of writing, that's for sure. I've worked with people this year who have been working in the film business, and I've learned a lot from them about screenplays and how to write them, and they've learned from me that the novels and fiction in the printed form is different as well. So mostly it's mostly science fiction and fantasy for you, I guess. Now, you mentioned the other book, which we dipped into a little bit. This book, Reunion. When did that come out? The Reunion.
2014.
So quite recent, and that was, and I'm going to get this word right. It's a post-apocalyptic. Yeah, I got it right. Tale. What is, just for people who don't know, I do, but you and so do you. What does post-apocalyptic mean?
Following the apocalypse, whatever the fictional apocalypse it might be. In my case, it's well, I don't want to spoil the surprise. Let's just say it's different than the standard zombie overrunning the world or nuclear holocaust that we tend to be more familiar with.
Well, I think these days the most is the Hunger Games, isn't it? The Hunger Games is a post-apocalyptic thing, I think, and Planet of the Apes, of course, was a post-apocalyptic thing, I suppose, post-nuclear holocaust thing. So that came out in 2014. Now that was, is that a print book as well, or just an ebook?
Both.
And that was a post-apocalyptic tale, which you're not going to tell us too much about, because we want people to go out and buy it. But does that have any more adventures in it? Are you likely to dip back into that and add more to it?
No, that is one and done. It's interesting. It's set here largely in Portland, so I had fun destroying local landmarks and places with which I am very familiar.
Well, that's the thing. As writers, we can commit murder all the time. We can commit murder. We can destroy cities. We can bury people alive. We can do all sorts of things. Really, it's all fiction. It's a wonderful thing. And if you decide you don't like a character, you can just get rid of them, and no one's going to come knocking on the door. It's a wonderful thing. Now, hopefully, people won't go knocking on your door while you're writing, because when you're not doing that, you're busy with your hobby, aren't you? At home, one of your many hobbies. I think don't you make your own beer there in Portland?
Yes. Well, many people in Portland make their own beer. I'm hardly alone.
This beer has this beer making served as inspiration for you during the writing of these books?
Well, of course, there's alcohol as a muse, which a lot has been written about. So I have had one or two during some writing sessions, and on top of that, I refer to beer within my works many times. The book I'm working on right now, which I hope to complete, I deal with beer as part of world making or world building exercise, establishing the culture through what they inhabit. Just a little touch.
Okay, so well, it's important that I think that it's given proper credit in how it serves as inspiration and everything. Now, as well, so the one you're working on now, obviously, you're what you said you're well into that. You're at the 15,000 word mark. That's hopefully going to be pitched around next year sometime, all being well. So what will you be doing after that? Will you move into a different genre, a completely different area, or stick in the same thing?
Well, I'm thinking about getting into a series. So if I can sell it, I'd like to keep moving on the same genre for a while.
So were you quite successful at getting your work out there in the first place? Not so much with the short stories, but with the novel. Did you have many rejections of your work with the Reunion?
Reunion, actually, I believe it was picked up by the third publisher. There were actually two who were willing to look at it at the same time, and I went with the more established publisher, Twilight Titles. But yes, it had been rejected a couple of times before.
Is Under Strange Suns the same publisher?
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's good then. So obviously they must be confident that you're going to be reasonably successful. Otherwise, they wouldn't go to the trouble of publishing it. So I think a lot of people today, if they're just starting out, I mean, they always want to know. If they ask me or other people, I suppose they say, "Well, how do I get published?" And really, people have to be persistent, don't they?
Yes, if you're going to, if you're someone who gives up easily, writing is not for you. Seriously, a thick skin, persistence, patience. It's vital.
So if somebody had rejected Reunion or Under Strange Suns, would they be rejecting you as a person? You're a horrible person for having written this awful book. It's not true, is it?
Hardly. I may be a horrible person, but it has nothing to do with the novel.
I think that's there. I think some people tend to think that they're either a horrible person. They take it very personally, and they're a horrible person, a horrible writer, as well as their book being horrible. And it's not really the case. It means that their book is just not to that publisher's taste,
Exactly.
or even just not the publisher's taste at that time, I suppose. Now you are busy, of course. You have a secret identity in the real world with a real job and everything. So do you have time to get involved with the local writing scene and the local community networking and stuff?
Not anymore. Briefly, I was involved in a writing group when I was still just writing short stories. And given the way that group was structured, I can't imagine sitting through a critique novel. Given how a novel is built, you give somebody a section and you get critiques based on the section of the novel. Well, of course they're going to complain about lack of information about this or that character because they're only reading a sliver of a whole work. So I haven't been involved in a writing group for a while, and frankly, with, as you say, a secret identity and a family, a 2-year-old daughter, don't really have time.
No, I think that's it. I think a lot of people talk about network. I think networking is important. I think in your local community with other writers, it's good to know other writers. I think, but as you say, you really have got to have the time for that. And if you have a young family, it's really most of any free time you may have, it has to be spent with the writing. If you've got any free time away from it, so the family always seems to come. Well, it does come first. Let's be honest, it has to really. So you are. Involved in you're marketing the books though as well. You're pretty active with that.
I am. With the second novel, the publisher did ramp up the marketing efforts, so I'm doing less, which is fine with me. But yes, there are marketing activities. As a matter of fact, I have a signing tomorrow. I had a signing last Saturday at a used bookstore, and I was a guest at the local Portland Science Fiction Convention in November. They keep asking me back, so I keep going and trying to do some marketing there. Of course, there's Facebook, Twitter, that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, you've got to do all that stuff to get your name out there and everything. So it's pretty important. So science fiction conventions and things, I suppose they may be in your future, perhaps.
I believe so. As long as I keep getting invited, I'll keep going. And if there are others in the area that are interested in inviting me as a guest, get a hold of me. I'll make a weekend free.
So, anything you'd like to tell us about the sort of writing process that you get into? Anything? I mean, do you write at night? Do you write in the day? Do you write just at the weekend? Do you do an outline beforehand? Anything you'd like to sort of share with the viewers?
Well, I have dabbled in pantsing, as they call it, but I find that I'm pretty much a committed outliner. I need to know where I'm going. I need the scaffolding before I can start putting up the rest of the building. So I do outline, perhaps not as detailed as others, but I do have a pretty solid foundation for my work before I get into it. Writing, I write in the evenings now. Again, it changes as the family situation changes. After my daughter was born, there was about the 6-month period when I would write from about 9 to 11 at night before the last, one of the last feedings and changings. Get a few hours of sleep before getting up going to work. Now I get home, take care of the baby, have some dinner, and if I can, try to get in about an hour, hour and a half to about 8, 10, whatever the schedule allows. But the point is consistency. So even if I'm not getting it solid 1,000 words, at least I'm making sure I'm getting some words on the page every day.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think I meet a lot of people who have been writing a book for quite some time, and they're leaving it alone for 3 or 4 months, and then coming back to it. And then I've met other people who've been very committed to doing something every single day and getting a book done, in a few months, as opposed to still 6 or 7 years. They're still doing it. Obviously, it depends on your circumstances. Some people set time aside at night. I always did when my children were young. It was always night. And I never wrote in the day much. I couldn't write much in the morning at all. I just never seemed to be in the mood to do that. But I'm also an outliner. I mean, the first book I didn't. I just thought I would have an idea for a story, and I'd just write it down. It could just all flow out of me. I'd make a few notes and things on paper on the side, but I also outline. I do an outline before I start. So how long would it take you? Would it have taken you, for example, with Under Strange Suns, you would have sat down and thought, right, I've got this great idea, and I'm going to write an outline down. How long would it take you to do the outline before you started the actual book?
I usually get an outline done in under a month, probably 2-3 weeks.
And then after that, does the outline have to be completely and utterly sound before you start writing the book, or would you have a few bits and pieces you hadn't quite worked out, and you'll think, well, when I get to that stage, it'll probably be clearer?
I think if I had to wait for the outline to be sound, I would never write the book. Once you start writing, you discover the holes, or you find some new directions, or something is adjusted, or you move a piece here or there. But the outline is still the starting point.
Yeah, it's exactly what I did. I mean, I did 2 sequels to the last novel. I decided to do 2 sequels. I was going to write 2 sequels, and I said, well, I'm not going to do 2 outlines. I'm going to do 1 outline, a long outline, and split it somewhere in the middle when I find a suitable point. And in part 3 of this trilogy, that was where the holes were. Not now. There were things that, not so much plot holes, but just things that were very vague. And I thought, well, when I get to that stage, I'll have some ideas, and I have done. And I'm right at the end now. But yeah, it sounds like we do things the same way. I couldn't do it otherwise. Letting the muse carry you every day, and things. I need to have some sort of a framework. Yeah. Yeah.
The muse needs some rest from time to time.
Yeah. It's not for everyone. I mean, when I teach classes and things, I tell people, I used to tell people, you must have an outline, but I don't now. I tell children that they should have an outline if they're writing a story. It's important for them to keep on track. But for adults, it's entirely up to you. If you don't want to do an outline, but I personally need something, and the outline can change as I go along, of course, but I like to have that. And sometimes it's very tight and never changes much, and other times it veers off, usually in the middle, somewhere in the middle, things are added in. Yeah. Now, these books are available, of course, all your books, but primarily the brand new one, which is so new, it's hot off the press today. Where can people buy Under Strange Suns?
Well, at any electronic bookshop that you prefer, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, what have you. And I don't know, Barnes & Noble in the Portland area carried Reunion. They may pick up Under Strange Suns. It's a bit too early for me to know. But of course, you can always go into your local bookshop if you prefer to shop at brick and mortar and ask the bookseller to pick up a copy.
Yeah, and a print copy, I would think if it's just come out today, Barnes & Noble might not have a print copy before Christmas, but they should, if they've got the other one, they should certainly be there. They'll have your name in their system, so they should do that. So now, why would people want to buy this book? Why should they buy Under Strange Suns?
Because it's a hell of an adventure.
And
if you enjoy a solid, rollicking adventure, then Under Strange Suns is the book for you.
Wow. Well, it sounds exciting enough, I must admit, and it's available in all the different formats and everything. Now, if people are interested in finding out about you, you've got a website and everything, I think, haven't you? Of course, naturally.
It's kenlizzi.net.
Yeah. So you got the website, you got the Facebook, if people want to find out more about you and everything, and of course, the details of your social media contacts and everything will all be underneath the video here for people to find out more about you. So I'd like to thank you for being with us this evening, and wish you all the best with the book and with stuff in the future. I'm sure we'll be speaking again.
Well, it was my pleasure, and thank you for having me on.